Cool. Okay. So just to kind of, for the people who have just joined us on the recording, we've had a kind of little chat about how people got on last week with the material. If you are getting these only on recordings and you are planning on doing like what you do with when you sit down, oh my God, my English, when you sit down for Netflix and you watch 10 programs through at once. Binge. If you're planning on binge watching these, may I strongly suggest you don't, because there is benefit to working with the material for yourself in between, and a little bit of time to is useful. And so spreading the 4 recordings out over 4 weeks is perfect, but at least 4 days or even 8 days or whatever. So I would strongly recommend that if you've just watched the first one and you're watching this, that you press stop and you go away and you come back another day. So now that you're still here, just to kind of recap what we did last week. So over these 4 weeks, we are working with the 4 agreements, but I want to work with this over our full life. So I'm kind of looking at it from I was trying to decide how to split the 4 classes up, or the 4 talks up. And what I decided to do was to try out as a journey of life. So rather than one agreement each week, we're merging all the agreements, because I think they kind of merge, speaking with integrity 100%, you can kind of do on its own, but not making assumptions and not taking things personally. They kind of very much are blurred. And to say that we're always doing our best is important the whole way through. So what we're doing is we're kind of splitting, what my plan is to split it up over our life. So last week was kind of really an introduction as to what we were doing. This week, what I want to look at is from birth to kind of, our developmental years. So that could be 21, it could be 14, it could be 7. I don't know, but it's one of those divisible by 7 type of things. And to look at really how we created this rule book. The whole time, and then next week, what I want to do is I want to look at sort of the big section of our life. So I want you to give me the questions you want me to answer. So like it could be on marriage, relationship, kids, parents, jobs, changing jobs, so I would love to hear from you topics that you want me to include next week, because we're going to do the lifey bit next week. And then the 4th week is the death week. So notice if you're having a reaction when I even say that. Anyway, we'll come to that in week 4. We're not there yet. The whole time, what I'm inviting you to do is to just explore and to wonder. Remember that these are models. These are they're helpful, but they're not the whole truth. And sometimes maybe they're not even the truth. So to really explore and wonder. And what is it that I really want us to explore and wonder? I want us to explore and wonder, why do we take actions that hurt ourselves? Why do we choose, typically very unconsciously, but why do we choose to live in pain or drama? The psychologists say that the negative bias, they reckon it's how our brain is developed, that we have the negative bias, so that we remember, in the olden days, not to eat the red berry with the blue whatever, but you could eat all the other berries. So we remember the negative things. At least that's a theory. I have no idea whether it's true or not. However, certainly we've all got results from our teachers and looked and remembered only the negative thing. You got 12 A's and 1 B, and what do you talk about? You talk about the B. That. So regardless of how it developed, or whether it developed to save us, or whatever any of those different theories are, we definitely, in my experience, we have it. So we get hooked into pain, and we get hooked into drama, we get hooked into negativity. And the Buddhists, so they talk about us in suffering, the Toltecs, we talk about it in terms of the smoky mirror, and we talk about it in terms of hell on earth. The Matrix, as in the film, they talk about taking the pill and coming out of the dream state. I like to think about it, because my original teacher used to talk about us waking up. So the way I talk about it is that we're like asleep. And when we're asleep, when we're unconscious, when we're asleep, we are asleep in our hell on earth, that we can just move around in this pain body and create and live in this drama and be attracted to the drama and all of that. So I'm going to talk about it being asleep. And therefore the alternative is obviously being awake. Now, this is my perspective from my dream, given that we're all in our own little dream worlds, or my universe, or my way of describing it. So again, as always, change the language if it doesn't suit you. So my intention is to support us all to wake up. Because when we wake up, we can live in heaven on earth as opposed to hell on earth. Because in my opinion, in my dream, the way I make up the world in my universe, both exist. Heaven and hell both exist simultaneously. And depending on our actions, whether we take ourselves closer to being who we truly are, bringing us closer to the heaven on earth, or we take actions that takes us further away from who we truly are, brings us to the hell on earth. But both, in my opinion, exist. And in my opinion, it's not an opinion, it's a model, it's a theory. It's what I think of in my head, and it makes me feel good. So you can make it up any way you want. But the way I look at it is that we can access both these now. So we don't need to be reincarnated 12 million 100 times in order to clear our karma and end up becoming enlightened. I think we can simply choose heaven or hell, fear or joy, pain and suffering, or just be happy. And it's as simple as that. And the problem we have jumping from one to the other is this law book or this rule book or this way we have of seeing the smoky mirror, how we see reality. So if we can kind of clear the glasses somehow, then we can see that it's just a matter of stepping from hell to heaven, and that's it. It's as simple as that. I suggest it's as simple as, it's not easy, but it's as simple as that. Because every moment, all we need to do is remember who we are. If we can simply remember who we are, if we remember who we are, the source or the light, or make your word, but if we can remember who we are, at each and every moment, we can choose to take a step towards being our true self. Actually, you know what? I loved Mary Jane. It was great. She made a lovely cup of tea last night, and I really liked how much milk she put in it. Or we can take a step away from being our true selves. Mary Jane's tea was like dishwater. I don't know what her mother taught her. Yeah. When we remember who we are, we can be free from suffering, free from drama, free from pain, free to choose, so that we can make, you know what I'm going to say, make manifest the glory of God that is within us. Change the word God if it's a trigger, that we can make manifest who we truly are. We can live our dharma. We can just be ourselves. We can just be ourselves. Not our crazy personality self, right? Just in case you think I'm saying that. Not the crazy personality, but who we truly are. So what I want to look at this week then is kind of the formative years, because we're talking about, in the Toltec language, they talk about having a rule book or a law book. And our book of laws or our rules is what we live by. And they're lies. Sorry, I should have sort of done it. They're lies, right? You go, well, some of them might be lies, but they're not all lies. How do I know whether they're lies? If the rule book, the rule that you're living by, hurts you or hurts another person, you're dealing with lies. It's a lie. It's a lie, and it's probably a lie that has created a wound, and then you've got a lie and a wound, and then you're pushing up against somebody else's wound, and it gets all very messy and woundy. If it hurts you, if this belief hurts you or hurts someone else, it's a lie. It's that simple. However, we have created this wonderful rule book, and we have and from this rule book, and we basically live in a dream world that, or they call it the smoky mirror, because the dreams are not always kind of pleasant. And we can use our lies, our rules, our laws to hurt ourselves, or to suppress ourselves, or against ourselves. But here's the thing, for me, these were laid down very early. It was laid down, I'm going to argue that it was laid down a lot when we were in the womb, you know, and then and maybe even the first 12 months. So really pre-verbal, you know, how it is to be human, how it is, like if there's a lot of fear, if the mum is very fearful, if they were in an abusive relationship, if they were in a war zone now, and we weren't probably in those kind of situations, but the equivalent, if we're under stress, if we're under, like, there's an energy in our body, and we know this from yoga, for me, being afraid of going to do the diving, my entire body turned into like this, like knot, and my freedom and my movement, my lack of freedom and my lack of movement, because of the adrenaline in my body, and adrenaline has an effect on my nervous system, and the baby is within the mum. So I think that within the first, while the baby is still in the womb, they are learning how it is to be human, because they are getting the hormones from the mum, they're getting the adrenaline, they're getting the information, be it energetically, chemically, physically, whatever way you want to word it, and for the first 12 months. So all this pre-verbal work, we are laying down an understanding of what it is like to be human. And then as we start to develop verbal skills, and remember, of course, the baby has been learning verbal skills they recognize the mum's voice, and that's why we play the music and all this kind of stuff. So even from the verbal skills point of view, it's not like, oh, well, once we turned 2, we were able to talk. But what we're using our verbal skills for is how we interpret it. So, and this is only a model, I'm not saying it's true, but that we have learned how it is to be human, and now we're layering on top of that our understanding of how it is to be true, and interpreting it. And so we've got that at a very early age, and then as more and more things happen to us, we add on more and more rules, and more rules into our rule book. So, and you'll kind of notice that, because our language is we give it away in our language, and we give it away in our body. Our body and our language probably tell the truth. But if you have something like, I don't know, something bad happens, you go, this kind of stuff always happens to me. It always, or this happens because I'm so bleeding stupid. I'm so bleeding stupid. There I go again. Or, like, I'm really bad with money. Or, there I go again. It's all, or like, it's no wonder that blah de blah happened because I'm blah de blah. All these kind of global sentences that you say to yourself in your head, most likely, and sometimes we say it out loud, where we kind of make little things, little small incidents, we make them global. So we're looking at something, an event. It's simply an event. And that is saying to us, yeah, of course it is, because you know what? And you're hooking then onto the law that you have created. So you may have created a law that I'm crap at maths. I shouldn't have said crap. I'm very bad at maths, that you picked up somewhere in school or whatever. And so whenever you can't add up a bill, it's reminding you, and you're reaffirming that law that you created. So if it's raining on your wedding day, it's not just because the wind has blown some clouds in, and the air temperature has changed or whatever. It's because you have bad luck. It's typical of my luck. Yeah, we take the weather personally. Like, how nuts is that? The weather. So I can't say often enough, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So when we're very young, we're pre-verbal. We're picking all this up from our parents, and I'm going to say parents. So again, this is shorthand for the key influencers in your life when you were young. So be that you're adopted, be that you were reared by your grandparents, be that whatever your story is, please substitute back in. When I use the word parents, please put in your primary caregivers when you were at a very young age. The exception to that is that your birth mother, obviously you were in a womb, so she gets to stay. And then put in for you whoever the other key people were when we're thinking about this. The key people that were present during the first year of your life. Yeah. And the simple thing is that we're trying to understand or interpret what they're looking for from us. But when we're that little, it's all about love. You just love your parents, your caregivers, your parents. You just love them. And so you're learning how it is to be, you are being domesticated, you're being socialized, you're learning how it is to be in the world. And so what happens is, when they are struggling, then they will project that and you will pick that up, because we just learn from absorbing what's around us when we're that little. Now, here's what happens right now when I start to say stuff like this. Here's what's going to happen. You, if you are a parent, are going to start feeling guilty about all the shit that you put on your kids, right? And simultaneously, then you're going to think it's like, I took all this shit from my parents. As in, I made my rule book from my parents, so that's all my fault. And I screwed up my kids because I'm screwed up. Yeah? Are you enjoying that sensation of being to blame on both sides? We're nuts. That is our rule book somewhere saying that somehow it's our fault. If you are a parent, here's a newsflash. Your children chose you. You did not choose them. You didn't manifest them. You didn't pull them out of the air or whatever else, or off the, okay, I won't say, sorry, there's other non-PC comments about being in a car or a hotel or whatever, but let's leave all them out. Your kids chose you. Now, how is that to be? Because we'll come back to this next week and you can see. So think about it. What would happen if your kids chose you? So if your kids chose you, then you chose your parents. So why did you choose such shite parents? Or why did you choose such great parents? Or why did you choose whatever insert word that you have used to describe your parents, neurotic parents, whatever? It's a perspective. It's purely a perspective, and I'm looking for you to look at your life from maybe a different perspective. So if you didn't choose your kids, if your kids chose you, then they chose you to learn whatever the hell it is that you're there to teach them. They are not yet responsible adults, or some of them might be, but some of them might still be little. But they have their journey, and they will pick up whatever it is that they have to pick up, and they will go and do their thing. You are responsible for yourself. And the work that you do on yourself now, the work that you do here with this, 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. Don't ask me about the generations back. I have not a clue. But the work that you do on yourself will affect 7 generations forward. And it'll affect 7 generations forward, whether that you're a parent or an aunt or a teacher or, you know, anybody that you're in influence with, it will affect 7 generations forward. So I am going to invite you to see what it is like, right? To not feel guilty about screwing up your kids. It's an advanced exercise, you know. But it's an invitation to see what it's like. I want you to look at this from both perspectives, both you as the child as well as you as the parent, those of you who are parents or who are teachers. I'll have Miriam back on now in a second. Give me guff. How are we setting up? So our energetically, how we feel about ourselves is going to come through. It just comes through. That's just the way it is. Our connection with our little babies is very primal and very strong. And your connection with your mum when you were a little baby is very primal and very strong. So you just received that information. And then you're starting to interpret it, and now you're starting to add rules onto it. So I'm going to call that bit your constitution. And now we're going to start putting on rules. So here's the thing, right? The mum is trying to get out to school or out to whatever, and she's trying to get the kid to put the shoes on. And of course, the kid is like in dreamy world, just doing their little dreamy world thing. And the mum is getting frustrated and trying to get the shoes on. And then they'll do something like emotional blackmail. Please, you know, if you put your shoes on for me, or do you love me, or do something because you love me, or any of this kind of emotional blackmail where you are directly using language to get your kid to do something, or it was done for you to get you to do something. So straight away now you're saying to the kid, put your shoes on if you love me. And if you want love from me, you have to put, what really happens is if you want love from me, you have to put your shoes on. And some of us are more supple, you know, some of us are like, we're good. We don't say things like that, but we do it in our face. Will you load the dishwasher for me? You know what? And then when they load the dishwasher, thank you. That's really good. You know, so we're all the time giving instructions to the kids to do activities, and we have been receiving, remember we were kids, but we're giving them to the kids to get them to do stuff. So our job, let me be clear, our job is to domesticate our kids 100%. We do not, it's not helpful, it's not good or bad, it's just an event and it has a consequence. It is not useful if you are a parent to let your kids just run wild and not train them how it is to be in the world. You know, you need to teach them how to put on shoes and socks. You need to tell them that they need to wear their clothes as they're going to school. You know, you need to support them do their homework. So these are important things. Our problem is that we do not necessarily have the skill to do it without using emotional blackmail, because that's the way we were reared. That's how we communicate with each other. We put it on as if for somehow, like, put the shoes on for me. Like, put the shoes on, don't put the shoes on. You put the shoes on, you wear the shoes. You don't put the shoes on, well, you get cold feet, you have a cold, or you get wet feet, or you're all mucky, or, you know, whatever. It's a simple event and consequence, event and consequence, event and consequence. So for us, the question is, why do we want the kid to put the shoes on? And it might be because we don't want them to have cold feet. But it might be because we don't want them to go to school with no shoes on, because then they'll be going, who is your mom? Who's your one that doesn't even put shoes on her kids, bringing her to school? Or it might be because you want to protect your kid from being bullied, because if they go into school with no shoes on, then people will be taking it, you know. So there is a question going on for us. Where is our agenda? What is our, and if we can get clear on that, we can then release the emotional, because it's probably not about the kid having muck on their shoes. It's probably deeper, that we don't want them picked on, or we don't want to look like neglected mums, for example. So if we can kind of layer down, it means that we can be cleaner with our language. And it's not just us, it's also the teachers. So and remember, I am talking about it, I'm talking to ye as if ye are the parents, but really you were the child. You were the child that was told that they needed to do some action to be loved. That is not what your parent really meant. It's not what you really mean. Because you know as the adults that you love your kids. Or if you don't have kids, you know that parents love their kids. And you know that the intention wasn't to be conditional. However, how we language it is conditional. And when we get stressed, we use this kind of conditional energy, because we can't hit them anymore. So, you know, let's face it, if you can't hit them, what are you going to do? That was a joke. And we haven't learned an alternative. We've learned to use our emotional blackmail. And it's not just the parents, the teachers are in for it as well. And what did I hear? A parent standing waiting for a bus. And I'm not onto teachers yet, I'm still on parents. Standing waiting for a bus, and this parent says, if you don't, to a 3-year-old, if you don't stop running around, the bus will never come. Like, what is that about? Like, and now the bus is going to come. The child didn't stop running and the bus came. So now what's happening? Like, now we've learned to not trust our parents because what they said wasn't true. And remember, as babies, we trust our parents. We think our parents are like God's gift. And then when we get to primary school, we still think they're like God's gift. You know, primary school teachers, preschool teachers, and then primary school teachers, the same. There's that same love. Like, as a Steiner teacher, we would talk about up until the age of about 9 or 10, it's all about love. The kids are doing stuff because they love their teacher, they love their parent, and they are doing it from this love, from this heart place. They haven't really got into their head yet. Very young, they're all in their body. And then once they get out of their hands, you know, when they figure out where their hands is, they move to their heart, and then they move to their head. So you're not really dealing with head stuff until they're kind of secondary school. And that's a whole other ballgame, because you're looking at creating separation there. So everything that was said to you, every time that people use emotional blackmail on you, and if they could have done better, they would have done better. They were not trying to hurt you. There's nobody trying to hurt you here. It's simply that as humans, they weren't complete for themselves. Like, their insecurities seep through their language. It just oozes through, the same as our insecurities ooze through our language. But because we trust the parents, because we trust them, and because we love them, then we believe what they're saying. And we believe, and some of it isn't even verbal, 80% of language is nonverbal, so like this business of I know it's a big thing now to try and comment on the behavior, not the person. So at least now we've become conscious as parents to try and differentiate the behavior in the person, and we struggle with it, I suspect. And our parents, that idea didn't even exist. It wasn't even thought of. So us associating, and how many of you have a good girl kind of, doing things to be a good girl? Like, we might be 90 and we're still trying to be a good girl. Why in God's name are we trying to be a good girl? Because it's something that happened in school, a teacher when we were like 5. But it's so ingrained in us that it's hard for us to not be a good girl. Or the opposite, the people who struggled to be a good girl, so discovered their best way was to be a rebel, or to throw off the thing. So it's actions and reactions, it's the same side of the coin, where we either do what we're asked to do or we do the exact opposite, but it's in reaction to that same thing. One of my favorite teachers, one of my favorite my kids, one of them, so they changed school. One of the girls came home and she said, like, she was really upset. And I'm like, well, why? What, what's going on? Oh, the teacher, they're going to take stars off our table, blah, blah. They said our table was very naughty and our table was always talking and our table was blah, blah, blah. And they're taking all the stars off our table. I'm like, well, tell me more. What was going on at your table? Well, it wasn't all of us. It was only Johnny, and he was talking, but we were all quiet. I'm going, okay. So I suspect your teacher was talking about Johnny. No, she said everybody on the table, so they're very literal. She was hurt. She was genuinely hurt because she thought that the teacher thought that she was bold and felt it was unfair because Johnny, whatever. So when we're that little, we really take this stuff so seriously. When we were that little, take yourself out of the mammy. It's really useful to be in the mammy zone, but take yourself out of the mammy zone and recognize that you were little once. We forget. We try to come in as an adult to fix it, but these beliefs, this like conditioning, happened when we were very, very, very young. And so much of it is unconscious. Just to pick on teachers again. The teacher left the room. Teacher came back into the room. Teacher's like giving it gusto about, because the kids were like talking or shouting or whatever they were going. And next thing, like, it was my son, had his hand in the air. And the teacher's like, Dominic, why have you got your hand up? And you go, well, you said whoever was talking to put their hands up. So I put my hand up. And the teacher wasn't even conscious that she had said that. She was just in her rant. And she's like, oh, put your hand down. Don't be stupid. Put your hand down. So we can, when we're under pressure, we default back to basically being our mother or our caregiver. How many of you have said, Jesus, I can't believe I sound like my mother now. We revert back unless we have done this work where we are redefining, because we have just inherited their rule book pretty much, and they inherited their parents' rule book. So unless we look to actually open our rule book and see what is inside our rule book, is it true? Is it useful? Do we want it? Then as an adult, we can then choose. And like I say, it takes work. It takes work because we don't even know that it's in the rule book. We are just acting from this rule book, from this habit. And it's so ingrained in us that we don't even know it's habit, because we're just doing exactly what our parents did, who just did exactly what their parents do. And it also is different in different cultures. You're in different countries, so, the Irish kind of history comes through us, whereas in England, I was in England, and they still have the kind of empire kind of thing going on, whereas we have the Irish are the kind of the famine and the leaving the country. There's, so even like there's generational upon generational cultural impacts that come through, and we act out of them without even realizing that we are acting out of them. So this is where I'm saying for us, it's about waking up. Because whatever, like, if our parents came to us as whole beings, then they would have parented us differently, and then we could be whole beings. But they weren't, their parents weren't, and we are a whole being, but we've got all these rules, and then so we're looking through this rule book that is not really ours. And so what our challenge here is to notice when what we're doing doesn't serve us or doesn't serve a person around us. So we can use this idea, of when we, and I'm going to use this is what I'm going to call old-fashioned language, when we hurt someone, because remember, we cannot hurt someone. But when our action has an impact that doesn't sit with us, which in the old language we would describe as we hurt someone. In our new language, we're going to describe it as making an unconscious statement or acting in an unconscious way, or, doing something in an unconscious way. And a consequence, not a good or bad, a consequence of that was impact on the other person in a certain way. We are not responsible for the impact on that person, but if something happens in that's a trigger for, sorry, it's not a trigger, I need a new word. That is an indicator. That is like a boing, an alarm for us to say, interesting. What went on there? How is it that I ended up creating this situation? And what's underlying it? So that you can start to look, because the first step to changing the rules, the first step to rewriting our rule book is knowing what the hell the rules are. We can't change them if we don't know what they are. And so as we become aware of it, then, and this is different from here, I'm going to say, become aware of the rule. And if at all possible, there's no requirement to go into the why. Often in our culture today, I call it the Joe Duffy effect. We discover something, and then we want to explain it. We want to understand it. We want to tell people about it. We want to analyze it. I'm very sorry for all the counselors that are on the call. I don't mean to do you out of business. And sometimes we don't need to overanalyze everything. Sometimes we can just notice, wow, here's a piece of information. Sometimes 100% you want to go, if it's reoccurring, if you can't get past it yourself, 100% use all the resources around. So that body work, counseling, psychology, whatever, 100% use them. But it doesn't have to be for all of the time. So I'm just sort of saying, if we cannot go down the Joe Duffy road, and so sometimes we can just notice and not add the drama. Our habit is to add drama to everything. Certain things, 100% you want to go and get support with. But a lot of the stuff, just like, wow, isn't that interesting? Wow, I was unconscious of that rule. I'd like to change that rule. I'd like to change that belief. I'd like to change that. And then notice how difficult it is. I mean, Jackie was talking earlier about as we become conscious, it's really difficult. So give yourself a break, have a little bit of wonder, have a little bit of a sense of humor about it. And I'm going to say that there's laws. So the law book, if you think of laws in the world, in the government, or in Ireland, laws can be made up from loads of different things. There's like the kind of typical historical laws, which is like, well, that's coming from Brehon law or whatever. And then something might happen. So Veronica Guerin happened, and then loads of new laws happened. So we can create new laws based on an event, and then we can create new laws based just kind of things just evolve. So there's kind of 3 different ways that we add to our rule book, because we're still adding to our rule book now. And I'm going to suggest that our constitution is that sort of pre-verbal stuff, that real sense of how it is to be a human being. And so we can 100% change the constitution. 100% you can change it, but it's a bigger deal. You have to have a referendum, and before you have to have a referendum, you have to inform everybody, you have to have a load of conversations, and you have to tell everybody. So there's a whole, like, if you're working at that constitutional level, at that real fundamental core of how it is to be a human being, that just takes a little bit more work. But the way into it is all of these other rules. So I'm saying start with the new rules, The less time you've had them, the less time you've had these beliefs. So here's an example. I am afraid of water. An old rule that happened from about, I think I was about 9 or 10, whenever I think I had that thing in the pool. I had something in the pool happened. So I had this rule, I'm afraid of water. Worked with it. Now I have a new rule. I love water. Woohoo! It's a new rule. I need to practice it a bit so that I don't forget, but it's a new rule. So I've changed that rule in my body, but I need to reaffirm the new one so that it becomes strong. But fundamental below that, being afraid of water, is how it is to be a human being. Am I a good girl? Am I a good enough? Am I good enough? Am I good enough? You know? Yeah. I'll tell you, I kind of, I'm just going over by a minute or two, but the am I good enough? So I've said that this constitutional rule happens from your mum. And then the next, sort of the first year is very, very, very fundamental. And then obviously a big trauma later on can affect the constitution. It can 100% affect the constitution, but most of the constitution is laid down at that very young age. So when my mom passed, I was away and had to fly home and and when I went in to see her for the first time in the coffin, in the, whatever the hell the room is, no, right, yeah, anyway, I saw it for the first time. It was just really it was really powerful, because what I saw, what she said to me, what I remembered is, I am enough. That I am enough exactly as I am now. I am enough. That is the gift that she gave me lying there in the coffin. The first time I saw her, it was like, I am enough. I am entitled to breath, to breathe the same as everybody else. I'm entitled to space on this earth the same as everybody else. I don't have to earn it. I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to, there's no have tos. I am enough. And what really struck me was, my mum had to die before she realized that. Now, maybe she realized it just before I wasn't there with her for the few days before she died, but I know she was always striving to be good enough. And it just like was overwhelmingly like, shit, you lived your life not knowing this. Well, she probably knew it at some level, but like she was all the time working hard to be good enough. And she always was. And for that moment, she gave me that gift of telling me that I am good enough, that I don't have to do anything. I can lie on the ground like a slob and be fed by McDonald's and whatever, and that is okay. I am enough. I am enough. And once I know that, I'm free to do whatever I want to do, because I don't have to do it to justify my existence on this earth. I don't have to do it to justify breath, to justify anything. I don't have to justify anything. I am enough. Of course, then I forgot, because that's the way it is. So that constitution that I received directly from her, somehow, in some way, in the transition, she figured it out and she gave me a new constitution. But I have to work at remembering. There is nothing else to do but remember. Remember who I am. Remember who you are, who you truly are. There you go. So that is us for this week. That is how we got to be the crazy, wonderful, amazing, completely nuts personalities that we are. Next week, I would love to talk about how to change support. So questions would be really useful. And then, like I say, the fourth week we look at death. Cool. May the force be with you.